You begin at the roots of the story, long before the great battle at Kurukshetra, long before the names of Pandavas and Kauravas became household echoes. The Mahabharata opens with the tale of a dynasty, the Bharatas, whose lineage weaves together duty, desire, and destiny. To understand the conflict that will one day shake the world, you must first understand how the Kuru throne came to be shaped by choices made generations earlier. At the heart of this lineage stands King Shantanu, ruler of Hastinapura, a kingdom nestled on the fertile banks of the Ganges. Shantanu is remembered as noble and just, yet his life is marked by fateful attachments. One day he encounters a woman of unearthly beauty upon the riverbank, Ganga, goddess of the sacred river. Entranced, he asks her to be his wife. She consents, but only on one condition. He must never question her actions, no matter how cruel or strange they may seem. Blinded by love, Shantanu agrees. Their marriage begins in joy, but quickly turns to sorrow. Each time Ganga bears a child, she takes the newborn to the river and casts it into the waters. Shantanu watches in torment as 6 sons vanish, but his promise binds his tongue. When the 7th child is born, and she moves to drown him too, he can no longer remain silent. He pleads with her to stop breaking his vow. At that moment, Ganga reveals the truth. These children were 8 celestial beings, cursed to be born as mortals. By releasing them into her waters, she was setting them free. The 8th child, whom Shantanu has just saved, is destined to remain on earth. This boy is Devavrata, who will one day be remembered as Bhishma. Bhishma grows into a warrior of unmatched strength, disciplined, wise, and utterly devoted to his father. Yet his story is one of sacrifice. For years, Shantanu lives with only Bhishma as his heir. Then one day, while hunting, Shantanu encounters another vision of beauty, Satyavati, the daughter of a fisherman raised on the river. He desires her, but her father refuses, unless Shantanu agrees that her children, not Bhishma, will inherit the throne. Bound by love and torn by duty, Shantanu hesitates. When Bhishma learns of his father's anguish, he takes an oath so severe that it reverberates across the ages. He renounces his claim to the throne and vows never to marry, never to father children. To ensure his father's happiness, he sacrifices his own future, embracing celibacy and loyalty. This vow is so terrible and absolute that the gods themselves call it the Bhishma Pratigya, the terrible oath. From that moment, Devavrata becomes Bhishma, the one who is firm, the one whose resolve cannot be broken. Satyavati marries Shantanu, and 2 sons are born. Yet fate once again twists the lineage. Both sons die young, leaving no heirs. With the throne endangered, Satyavati turns to a son she bore before her marriage, fathered by the sage Parashara, a son named Vyasa, who is destined to be a seer and the very composer of the Mahabharata itself. In this story, the teller is also a character, weaving his own bloodline into the tale he records. To preserve the dynasty, Satyavati invokes the ancient custom of niyoga. When heirs are lacking, a chosen man may father children on behalf of a deceased king's widow. Vyasa agrees, though he is an ascetic, and from his unions with the widows of Satyavati's sons, 3 princes are born. Dhritarashtra, blind from birth, Pandu, pale and weakly, and Vidura, wise yet excluded from kingship because his mother was a maidservant. These 3 will shape the coming generations, the blind Dhritarashtra as father of the Kauravas, Pandu as father of the Pandavas, and Vidura as the voice of wisdom that tries, often in vain, to guide them. The seeds of destiny are sown here. You can feel how each birth, each vow, each twist of fate leads inevitably toward future conflict. Bhishma, the great protector, has sworn away his own heirs, binding himself to serve a throne that will pass to others. Dhritarashtra, though noble and strong, is blind, and in a world that prizes vision, this blindness bars him from kingship. even as it fosters bitterness. Pandu, frail though he is, inherits the throne instead, but his own life will carry curses and sorrow, and Vidura, the most righteous of the three, must remain in the shadows, offering counsel, but never power. You can almost see Hastinapura in these days, the palace halls echoing with the weight of destiny. Bhishma stands tall, his oath chaining him to service. Satyavati, once the fisherwoman, now the queen mother, watches over the fragile line of heirs, knowing that her choices have set into motion forces greater than she can control. And Vyasa, the sage, begins to shape the story not just as a father, but as the one who will immortalize these events in verse and memory. The origins of the Bharata dynasty reveal a truth that will echo through the entire epic. Every choice, however noble, carries consequences. Every sacrifice, however selfless, creates ripples that may one day lead to war. Shantanu's love for Ganga brings Bhishma, the greatest of warriors. Bhishma's vow brings Satyavati into the palace, but also denies Hastinapura his lineage. Vyasa's intervention ensures heirs for the throne, but flawed heirs, cursed by weakness, blindness, and bitterness. The Mahabharata begins not in battlefields, but in these choices, where desire, duty, and destiny intertwine. And so you stand at the dawn of the story, with the Kuru line established but fragile, the throne preserved but uncertain. The stage is set for the next generation, for the births of those who will one day carry the world into a war unlike any other. From the fragile foundations of the Bharata dynasty, the tale shifts to the next generation, the children whose rivalry will one day engulf the world in flames. Their births, miraculous and cursed, carry the weight of destiny. You can already sense that every child of this line is marked by forces greater than themselves, as though the gods and fate conspired to create them for roles they cannot escape. When King Pandu ascends to the throne, Hastinapura appears secure for a moment. Pandu is strong in battle despite his frail appearance and earns respect across kingdoms. Yet destiny strikes once more. While hunting in the forest, Pandu releases an arrow at a pair of mating deer. To his shock, the animals transform into a sage and his wife, cursed by Pandu's act. With his dying breath, the sage pronounces a terrible fate. Pandu will die if he ever lies with his wives. A king who cannot be a father is a king without a future. Despair fills Pandu's heart, but his queen, Kunti, remembers a secret gift. In her youth, she had served the sage Durvasa, who, pleased with her devotion, granted her a mantra that could summon any god and receive a child from him. With Pandu's consent, Kunti invokes the mantra. The first god she calls is Dharma, the very embodiment of righteousness. From this union is born Yudhishthira, the eldest Pandava, destined to be the embodiment of justice and truth. Next, she invokes Vayu, the god of wind, whose strength is unmatched. From him comes Bhima, mighty in body and temper, a whirlwind of power who will grow into a warrior feared across the land. Then Kunti calls Indra, king of the heavens, wielder of the thunderbolt. From Indra is born Arjuna, unparalleled archer, destined to stand at the very center of the coming war and to receive from Krishna the wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita itself. Yet Pandu also has a second wife, Madri, and Kunti shares the mantra with her. Madri calls upon the twin gods, Ashvins, healers and horsemen, and gives birth to twins, Nakula and Sahadeva, beautiful, skilled and loyal. Thus the 5 Pandavas are born, each tied to divinity, each marked for greatness. But fate does not allow Pandu to remain content. Years later, overcome by desire, he forgets the curse and approaches Madri in passion. At that instant, the curse takes his life. Madri, consumed by grief, chooses to ascend the funeral pyre with her husband, leaving Kunti to raise the 5 children alone. With Pandu's death, the Pandavas are fatherless, though protected by their mother's strength and Bhishma's guardianship. Meanwhile, back in Hastinapura, Dhritarashtra has taken the throne, despite his blindness, with Bhishma and Vidura guiding him. He marries Gandhari, princess of Gandhara, who, in devotion to her husband, blinds herself with a cloth so that she may share his darkness. Their marriage produces not 1 or 2 heirs, but 100 sons, born in a strange and ominous way. When Gandhari conceives, her pregnancy lingers for an unnaturally long time, leaving her restless and angry. Striking her womb in frustration, she delivers not a child, but a hard lump of flesh. Vyasa, summoned for help, divides the mass into 100 pieces and places each in a pot of ghee. From these grow the 100 Kauravas, the eldest of whom is Duryodhana, destined to be the chief rival of the Pandavas. Even at birth, signs of doom surround Duryodhana. The night he is born, the earth trembles, jackals howl, and ill omens fill the kingdom. The wise counsel Dhritarashtra to abandon the child, for his future will bring ruin. But blinded by love, Dhritarashtra refuses. The course of fate is set. As the children grow, the rivalries become evident. The Pandavas and Kauravas are raised together, trained under the care of Bhishma and later the great teacher Drona. Yudhishthira shows calm wisdom beyond his years, while Bhima's strength makes him fearless. Arjuna emerges as Drona's favorite, unmatched in skill, his focus razor-sharp. Nakula and Sahadeva, though quieter, shine with grace and loyalty. Duryodhana, however, grows resentful, his pride wounded by the brilliance of his cousins. Jealousy festers, and with Shakuni, his cunning uncle from Gandhara, constantly whispering in his ear, his hostility deepens into hatred. Bhima in particular becomes the target of this malice. Duryodhana, unable to defeat him in fair contest, plots to kill him. Once he lures Bhima to a river where poisoned food leaves him unconscious, and then ties him before throwing him into the waters. Yet fate again intervenes. The serpents of the river bite him, but their venom neutralizes the poison in his body, reviving his strength. He awakens stronger than before, returned to his brothers with new power. The rivalry sharpens during training under Drona. To test his pupils, Drona sets a challenge. A wooden bird is placed on a high branch, and each student must aim an arrow at its eye. When asked what they see, each prince mentions the tree, the bird, or its wings. Only Arjuna answers, "I see only the eye." His arrow strikes true, and Drona declares him his greatest pupil. Duryodhana's envy only deepens. Another incident seals the fate of these children. Karna, a youth of unknown birth but immense talent, steps forward to challenge Arjuna. His skill is extraordinary, but his origins are questioned. He is said to be the son of a charioteer, unworthy of dueling a prince. Humiliated, Karna finds an ally in Duryodhana, who crowns him king of Anga on the spot. This bond will prove unbreakable, as Karna pledges his loyalty to Duryodhana until death. Thus, you see the stage being prepared. The Pandavas, noble and skilled, win admiration wherever they go. The Kauravas, especially Duryodhana, seethe with jealousy, their uncle Shakuni feeding the fire of hatred. Karna, noble yet bitter at his rejection, aligns with the Kauravas, adding both power and tragedy to their cause. The children of the Bharata dynasty are no ordinary heirs. They are born of gods, of curses, of strange rituals and vows. From their very births, their lives are intertwined with omens, rivalries, and loyalties that will one day decide the fate of kingdoms. As they grow, their paths cross in ways that deepen the divide, drawing them closer to the inevitable moment when family will turn against family and cousin against cousin. And so you move forward, leaving behind the tales of miraculous births and early rivalries, aware that each small spark will one day blaze into the great fire of Kurukshetra. Now the princes are no longer children. They stand at the threshold of adulthood, where alliances, marriages, and the forging of reputation will shape their destinies even more sharply than their training ever did. It is here that the Pandavas begin to step into their roles as leaders. winning not only contests of skill, but also hearts and kingdoms. And yet, every triumph they gain pushes Duryodhana further into resentment, making conflict inevitable. After years of learning under Drona, the princes are tested once more in a great exhibition of arms. The citizens of Hastinapura gather to witness the skill of their future rulers. Arjuna dazzles the crowd, his mastery over the bow unmatched, arrows flying with such precision and speed that they seem to fill the air like rain. The people cheer his name, and for a moment it seems clear that the Pandavas will be the pride of the Bharata line. But Duryodhana steps forth with mace in hand, displaying his might in physical combat, and Karna rises to challenge Arjuna again, determined to prove himself Arjuna's equal, or better. Here, too, fate intervenes. The contest between Arjuna and Karna is halted when questions of Karna's birth resurface, once more branding him as unworthy in the eyes of the princes. But Duryodhana, ever ready to humiliate the Pandavas, embraces Karna as his own brother-in-arms. The seed of an unshakable alliance is sown that day, one that will later weigh heavily in the balance of war. Despite rivalries, the Pandavas begin to win allies of their own. Their reputation spreads far and wide, and kingdoms beyond Hastinapura take notice. When word reaches Panchala that King Drupada has arranged a Swayamvara, a contest for the hand of his daughter Draupadi, the Pandavas secretly attend, disguised as wandering Brahmins. Draupadi herself is no ordinary princess. She is born of fire, literally emerging from a sacrificial flame, destined to play a central role in the fate of the Bharata line. The challenge at her Swayamvara is daunting. A massive bow, nearly impossible to lift, must be strung, and an arrow must be fired through a spinning target to strike a fish revolving high above, visible only in its reflection below. Princes from across the land attempt and fail. Even Karna, strong and skilled, steps forward, but Draupadi, recalling the scorn he suffered for his birth, rejects him before he can attempt the task. When Arjuna, still disguised, rises to take his turn, the assembly doubts him. Yet with calm focus, he lifts the bow, strings it, and sends his arrow true. The target shatters. Draupadi garlands him, sealing her choice. When Arjuna returns with Draupadi to the modest home where he and his brothers live in disguise, he calls to his mother Kunti, telling her of the prize he has brought. Without seeing, Kunti instructs him to share equally with his brothers. Bound by their mother's word and by the values of dharma, the Pandavas all marry Draupadi, an arrangement unique in epic lore. Draupadi becomes wife to all five, binding the brothers together even more tightly. This union changes everything. With Draupadi by their side and their identities revealed, the Pandavas gain recognition and support. Their strength now rivals that of the Kauravas, and the balance of power in Hastinapura begins to shift. King Dhritarashtra, uneasy yet advised by Bhishma and Vidura to maintain harmony, divides the kingdom. The Pandavas are given Kandavaprastha, a barren land, while Duryodhana retains the prosperous Hastinapura. It seems like an insult, but the Pandavas accept it with dignity. Through determination and guidance, they transform the wasteland into Indraprastha, a city of wonder. With Arjuna's valor, Bhima's strength, Yudhishthira's justice, Nakula's and Sahadeva's skills, and Draupadi's wisdom, they build a realm that flourishes, shining with prosperity. Even the gods seem to favor them. Arjuna earns divine weapons through penance, Bhima proves himself in battles with demons, and Yudhishthira's reputation for fairness spreads across India. The Pandavas host the grand Rajasuya sacrifice, a ritual declaring Yudhishthira as emperor over allied kings. Guests from far and wide attend, including the Kauravas. Here, once again, envy stirs. Duryodhana, wandering the gleaming halls of Indraprastha, feels mocked by the marvels he cannot equal. In one famous tale, he mistakes a polished floor for water and lifts his robes, only to later stumble into a crystal pool he had thought was solid ground. The laughter that follows burns in his heart. The insult is unbearable, and when he returns to Hastinapura, his humiliation festers into fury. At this moment, Shakuni, the ever-scheming uncle, steps forward. Knowing Duryodhana's jealousy and greed, he devises a plan that will strike at the Pandavas' very core. If force cannot defeat them, perhaps trickery can. Shakuni suggests inviting Yudhishthira to a game of dice, a game Yudhishthira cannot resist, for he is bound by dharma to accept any challenge. But Yudhishthira's love for the dice is also his weakness, and in Shakuni's hands, the dice will never fall fairly. Thus, the stage is set for the next act of betrayal, humiliation, and exile. You can feel how each thread pulls tighter. The Pandavas gaining power through alliance and Draupadi, the Kauravas consumed by envy, and Shakuni weaving his net of deceit. The Swayamvara, the Rajasuya, the glittering rise of Indraprastha, all are preludes to the fall that comes with the rolling of dice. The story now moves into shadows, where envy and deceit will undo years of noble striving. You watch as the brilliance of Indraprastha and the greatness of Yudhishthira attract not only admiration, but also the greed of those who cannot bear to see others rise. Duryodhana's envy, once a smouldering ember, has become a raging fire, and Shakuni, master of cunning, prepares to use that fire to consume the Pandavas. The game of dice begins innocently enough, an invitation to Hastinapura under the guise of hospitality. But the hall where the game is to be played is no ordinary place. It is a trap carefully designed. Yudhishthira, true to his dharma, cannot refuse when called. He is a king, his honor binds him. Yet he knows, even as he enters, that Shakuni's hand with the dice is unerring, for the dice themselves seem to obey his will. At first, Yudhishthira wagers modestly, but with each throw he loses. Shakuni's laughter echoes, and Duryodhana's smirk deepens. The stakes grow higher. Yudhishthira wagers his wealth, his lands, his kingdom. Each time he loses. The court watches in silence as the tide of fortune turns into a storm of disaster. Then comes the moment when desperation blinds reason. Yudhishthira wagers his brothers one by one and loses them all. Hima, the mighty warrior, Arjuna, the peerless archer, Nakula and Sahadeva, loyal and skilled, all are lost in a game of chance, bound to servitude. Still Yudhishthira plays, and still he loses. Finally, with his honor shredded, he wagers himself, and loses. Yet the cruelty does not end there. With Shakuni goading him, Yudhishthira wagers Draupadi, the queen born of fire, the pride of the Pandavas. With a final cast of the dice, she too is lost. At that moment, Duryodhana sends for her to be dragged into the assembly hall. The daughter of Drupada, wife of 5 kings, is humiliated before the eyes of all the elders and warriors of Hastinapura. Draupadi, burning with righteous fury, questions the very legitimacy of the wager. If Yudhishthira had already lost himself, how could he stake her? Her voice rings like thunder in the hall, yet silence greets her. Bhishma bows his head, Vidura speaks of dharma but is ignored, and Dhritarashtra remains weak, torn between love for his son and duty to justice. Duryodhana, drunk with triumph, commands Draupadi to be disrobed. But fate itself rises to protect her. As Dushasana pulls at her garments, Draupadi prays to Krishna, surrendering her pride to divine will. Miraculously, no matter how much he pulls, her garments never end. Cloth after cloth appears, endless, infinite, until Dushasana collapses in exhaustion. The miracle silences the hall, a sign that Draupadi is shielded by powers far greater than mortal men. In that silence, Dhritarashtra, fearful of curses and divine wrath, finally intervenes. He grants Draupadi a boon, and she chooses not vengeance but freedom for her husbands. Dhritarashtra offers her another, and she asks for their lost wealth and lands to be returned. Her grace shames the assembly, but Duryodhana's rage is not quenched. He demands a second game, promising that this time the stakes will be exile. Bound again by dharma, Yudhishthira cannot refuse. The dice are rolled once more, and the Pandavas lose again. The punishment is harsh. 13 years of exile, 12 in the forest and 1 in disguise. Should they be discovered during the 13th year, the exile will begin anew. Thus the Pandavas, once lords of Indraprastha, leave their kingdom in sorrow, clothed in deerskins, accompanied by Draupadi. The people weep as their beloved rulers depart, while Duryodhana revels in triumph. Bhima swears vengeance, vowing to one day tear open Dushasana's chest and drink his blood, to crush Duryodhana's thigh in battle. Arjuna looks to the heavens, praying for weapons worthy of the coming war. Nakula and Sahadeva, silent but resolute, walk beside their brothers. Yudhishthira, though broken, clings to the path of dharma, certain that time itself will bring justice. The exile is not merely punishment, it becomes a crucible. In the forests, the Pandavas endure trials that test their endurance and faith. Bhima battles Rakshasas, Arjuna ascends to the heavens to acquire celestial weapons, and Draupadi's faith is tested as she suffers the hardships of life far from the palace. At times, despair gnaws at them, and Draupadi herself demands why dharma has not protected them. Yudhishthira replies that dharma is not a shield from suffering, but a guide through it, even when the world seems cruel. In their exile, they gain allies too. They encounter sages who bless them, kings who offer support, and above all, Krishna, who visits them as friend and counselor, reminding them that their destiny is not defeat, but preparation. Each hardship, each humiliation, is forging them into the instruments of fate. Meanwhile, in Hastinapura, Duryodhana grows arrogant. Though he revels in his victory, he cannot shake the knowledge that the Pandavas still live, still endure, and still gather strength. The elders whisper that dharma has been trampled, and that someday justice will return with terrible force. And so the years of exile pass, marked by endurance, faith, and preparation. The Pandavas, stripped of everything, grow only stronger in spirit and skill. The fire of Draupadi's humiliation still burns in their hearts, and Bhima's vow, Arjuna's quest, and Yudhishthira's patience are all pointed toward one inevitable truth. When they return, war will follow. The dice game has changed everything. From the golden halls of Indraprastha to the harsh forests of exile, the fortunes of the Pandavas have reversed. Yet beneath the suffering lies the certainty that the cycle of fate will turn again, and when it does, the reckoning will come. The 13 years pass like a long shadow over the land. The Pandavas, hardened by exile, emerge not weaker but sharper, their resolve forged by trials. They have lived among sages, fought demons, and endured hunger and humiliation. The 13th year, spent in disguise at the court of King Virata, ends without discovery, sealing their right to return. Now, as the terms of exile are fulfilled, they seek the restoration of their kingdom. Yet what begins as a plea for justice soon hardens into the final march toward war. The Pandavas do not return in secret. They come openly, with Krishna as their guide. Krishna is no mere ally. He is divine, the 8th incarnation of Vishnu, yet also kin, friend, and strategist. His presence carries the weight of destiny. As preparations begin, Krishna advises diplomacy first. War must not be the first step. Dharma demands peace be attempted, no matter how unlikely. Thus, emissaries are sent. At first, the Pandavas ask only for what is theirs by right, the return of Indraprastha. But Duryodhana refuses, his pride swelling as though he himself has conquered the earth. Then Yudhishthira, ever willing to bend for peace, offers compromise. Not the whole kingdom, not even Indraprastha, but merely 5 villages, enough for each brother to rule a small portion of land. Surely this humble request cannot be denied. Yet Duryodhana's pride knows no limits. He laughs at the proposal, declaring he will not yield even land the size of a needle's point. Shakuni nods at his side. Karna stands firm in loyalty, and the 100 Kauravas echo their brother's defiance. The die is cast once more, not in a hall of dice, but in the refusal of peace. Before war begins, one last attempt is made. Krishna himself goes as messenger to the Kaurava court. He speaks not as warrior, but as peacemaker, urging Dhritarashtra and his sons to avoid the bloodshed that will surely come. His words are noble, but the blind king's will is weak, and Duryodhana's arrogance unshakable. In his madness, Duryodhana even attempts to seize Krishna to bind him as prisoner. But Krishna reveals his true cosmic form, the Vishvarupa, dazzling and infinite, with countless faces, eyes and weapons, a vision of the universe itself. The court trembles at the sight, realizing that they face not merely men, but divine will. Yet even this revelation cannot bend Duryodhana's pride. The path to war is now inevitable. As both sides prepare, alliances are forged across Bharatavarsha. Kings and warriors are summoned, each choosing their allegiance. Some aligned by blood, others by loyalty, still others by destiny. Duryodhana seeks Krishna's support, as do the Pandavas. When both parties arrive, Krishna offers a choice. One side may have his vast Narayani Sena, his formidable army, while the other may have Krishna himself, but unarmed, not lifting a weapon. Duryodhana eagerly chooses the army, blinded by numbers. Arjuna, humbly bowing, chooses Krishna, valuing counsel and presence over might. This choice, simple in appearance, seals the deeper victory of the Pandavas, for Krishna's wisdom will outweigh legions. The gathering of allies forms a tapestry of loyalty and rivalry. On the Kaurava side stand Bhishma, bound by his oath to Hastinapura, and Drona, loyal to the throne though his heart is heavy. Karna, ever faithful to Duryodhana, swears his life to the Kaurava cause, even as secrets of his true birth remain hidden. Shakuni, the schemer, rejoices, seeing the culmination of his long-plotted revenge. Kings like Shaliya, Purishrava, and others lend their arms, swelling the Kaurava host. On the side of the Pandavas, their cause is strengthened by Drupada and his sons, including Drishtadyumna, born to slay Drona, and Shikandi, born to bring Bhishma's fall. The Panchala forces march with them, as do the mighty warriors of Matsya, Chedi, and others who honor justice. Above all stands Krishna, the charioteer of Arjuna, the silent force that will guide the Pandavas not only through battle, but through the moral storm of war itself. The armies converge on the field of Kurukshetra, a plain destined to drink the blood of warriors and echo with the cries of gods and men alike. Chariots gleam, conch shells blare, banners flutter with symbols of gods, serpents and beasts. The Pandavas' standard bears Hanuman on Arjuna's chariot, while the Kauravas' standards wave with equal pride. It is not just a war of men, but of the very principles of dharma and adharma, justice and pride, played out on the earth's greatest stage. As the armies prepare, omens darken the sky. The earth trembles, jackals howl, meteors streak across the heavens. Wise men speak of destruction unseen since ages past. Mothers weep, knowing their sons march not to glory, but to death. Kurukshetra, once a place of sacrifice and prayer, becomes the chosen ground for the sacrifice of nations. In this charged silence before battle, you can feel the weight of centuries pressing down. Every vow, every humiliation, every injustice has brought the world to this moment. The dice game, the exile, the failed pleas for peace. They are no longer isolated events, but threads of a vast pattern. The Pandavas have endured suffering, yet their cause remains righteous. The Kauravas, swollen with arrogance, refuse to yield even a needle's breadth of land. The clash cannot be delayed. And so the stage is set. The conch shells are raised to the lips of heroes. The chariots roll into position, and cousins face cousins across the plain. The great war of Kurukshetra, the heart of the Mahabharata, is about to begin. The conch shells sound, their blasts rolling across the plain like thunder, announcing the end of an age. You stand in Kurukshetra, where 18 days of war will unfold, a battle so vast that it will become the measure of destruction for all time. The armies face each other in battle formations that stretch beyond sight, chariots gleaming, elephants armored, foot soldiers bristling with spears. At the heart of each host are heroes, whose names will echo through eternity: Bhishma, Drona, Karna, Arjuna, Bhima, and countless others. The first day dawns with the Kauravas holding the advantage. Bhishma, commander of their forces, stands tall on his chariot, white beard flowing, eyes burning with duty. Though his heart leans toward the Pandavas, his oath to Hastinapura binds him to fight for the Kauravas. His presence alone inspires terror, and under his command, the Kaurava army pushes forward with relentless force. Arjuna, matched against his grandsire, hesitates, torn between love and duty, unable to unleash his full strength against the one who raised him. The Pandavas falter under Bhishma's onslaught. Day after day, the battle rages with unimaginable ferocity. Bhima smashes foes with his mace, leaving fields littered with broken bodies. Arjuna unleashes storms of arrows that darken the sky, each shaft striking with unerring precision. Duryodhana commands boldly, his arrogance unshaken. Yet Bhishma's presence keeps the Kauravas in the ascendant. On the 10th day, a fateful plan is set in motion. The Pandavas know that as long as Bhishma stands, the war cannot be won. But Bhishma himself has given a clue. He will never raise arms against a woman, nor against one who was once a woman. The Pandavas turn to Shikhandi, born as a woman and transformed into a man, destined for this role. When Shikhandi faces Bhishma, the grandsire lowers his weapons. Arjuna, seizing the moment, fills the air with arrows, piercing Bhishma until his body bristles like a porcupine. He falls. Yet he does not die, lying instead upon a bed of arrows suspended between earth and sky. With his power removed, the war enters a new phase. Command passes to Drona, the great teacher of the princes. His knowledge of warfare is unmatched, and under his leadership the Kauravas regain momentum. Yet destiny does not favor him. Drona's heart, heavy with love for Arjuna and sorrow at the fratricidal war, weakens him. Still, he unleashes devastation, slaying countless warriors. To stop him, the Pandavas resort to a ruse. Bhima's son, Ashwatthama, shares the name of Drona's beloved son. Spreading the rumor that Ashwatthama is dead, the Pandavas strike at Drona's spirit. When he turns to Yudhishthira, the one who never lies, and asks if it is true, Yudhishthira says, "Ashwatthama is dead," but whispers the words, "the elephant," so softly that Drona cannot hear. Crushed with grief, Drona lays down his arms and is killed. The teacher who shaped the princes falls, another giant of dharma undone by deceit. Now comes Karna's hour. With Bhishma and Drona gone, Duryodhana places command in his hands. Karna, long held back by Bhishma's scorn, rises with fury. His arrows scorch the battlefield, his valor undeniable, yet fate has tied knots around his destiny. He knows not that he is the eldest Pandava, son of Kunti, abandoned at birth and raised by a charioteer. Kunti reveals the truth to him before the war's climax, begging him to spare his brothers. Karna, torn, promises only that he will not kill any brother, except Arjuna. Bound by loyalty to Duryodhana, he marches to his doom. The duels of the war are countless, each a saga. Bhima slays Duryodhana's brothers by the dozens, fulfilling Draupadi's vengeance. Abhimanyu, Arjuna's young son, penetrates the Chakravyuha formation, but is trapped and slaughtered by many warriors at once, a crime that stains the Kauravas' honor forever. The grief of his death shakes Arjuna, and his wrath burns like a firestorm. On the 17th day, Arjuna and Karna finally face each other. Their duel is a clash of equals, arrows flashing like lightning, chariots shattered, the ground scorched. Karna fights with unmatched skill, but fate intervenes cruelly. His chariot wheel sinks into the earth, and as he struggles to free it, he recalls the curse that doomed him. His divine weapons desert him in his moment of need. Unarmed, vulnerable, he pleads with Arjuna to pause, invoking the code of honor. But Krishna urges Arjuna to strike, reminding him of Draupadi's humiliation and Abhimanyu's death. Arjuna's arrow pierces Karna, and the great warrior falls, his life extinguished, his nobility betrayed by destiny. With Karna gone, the Kaurava cause crumbles. On the 18th and final day, Duryodhana stands alone yet unbroken. Bhima meets him in single combat with the mace. Their duel shakes the earth, both warriors evenly matched. But Bhima remembers his vow. Striking low, against the rules of war, he smashes Duryodhana's thigh, crippling him. The cry of his pain echoes across the field, the fall of the proud prince complete. Yet even in defeat, his spirit remains unbowed. But the war's horrors are not yet done. Ashwatthama, son of Drona, consumed by rage, strikes in the night after the war is over. Entering the Pandava camp as they sleep, he slaughters their children, extinguishing the line of heirs. His act, vile and desperate, curses him with immortality, condemned to wander the earth in misery. 18 days of battle leave Kurukshetra a wasteland. The soil is soaked with the blood of millions. Heroes lie broken, and widows wail in unending grief. The victory of the Pandavas is hollow, purchased with unbearable loss. Dharma has prevailed, yet at a cost so great that it feels indistinguishable from ruin. You see here the heart of the Mahabharata's power. Victory and defeat blur. Heroes fall through treachery as often as valor, and Dharma itself seems fragile, tested in the fire of war. What remains is not triumph but questions. What is justice? What is duty? What is righteousness, when even the noblest must sin to survive? The war is over, yet the silence it leaves behind is heavier than the clash of arms. The battlefield of Kurukshetra lies as a graveyard for the age of heroes. Where once chariots thundered and conch shells blared, now only vultures circle and widows wail. The Pandavas stand victorious, yet their victory tastes of ashes. For though they have reclaimed the throne, what remains of their world is little more than ruin. In the aftermath, the Pandavas walk among the dead, searching for survivors, for kin, for any remnant of life. Bhishma still lives, lying upon his bed of arrows, sustained by his will. The Pandavas gather to hear his final teachings. Though pierced and broken, Bhishma's mind remains sharp, and from that bed he delivers wisdom that spans kingship, duty, ethics, and the eternal struggle between dharma and desire. His discourse becomes a treasury of guidance, one of the longest portions of the Mahabharata, known as the Shanti Parva. When he finally departs, choosing the moment of his death with the arrival of auspicious time, the age of the grandsire ends. The Pandavas then journey to Hastinapura to take up the throne. Yudhishthira, though eldest and rightful, is racked with sorrow. He sees not victory but the corpses of kin, not power but the cries of mothers and widows. In his heart burns a question: what kind of dharma demands such destruction? His grief is so deep that he contemplates abandoning kingship altogether, retreating to the forest to live as a hermit. It is only through Krishna's counsel and the pleas of sages that he accepts his role. The kingdom cannot remain leaderless. Dharma must continue, however scarred. The coronation of Yudhishthira is grand, yet somber. The rituals restore balance. The throne of Hastinapura shines once more, but the hall that once echoed with laughter of cousins now feels hollow. The Pandavas rule, but they are haunted rulers, their joy forever broken by the memory of Kurukshetra. Even Draupadi, whose humiliation set much of this path in motion, finds no triumph in the outcome. Her sons, born of each Pandava, have been slaughtered by Ashwatthama's night raid. Her vengeance, once fulfilled in blood, has left only emptiness. Krishna, ever the guiding presence, remains with them for a time. He consoles, advises, and ensures the kingdom stabilizes. But his role is not eternal. The world itself is shifting, the age of dharma giving way to decline. The Mahabharata reveals that Krishna, too, is bound by destiny. His clan, the Yadavas, will fall into civil strife, destroyed by their own drunken quarrels. Even Krishna will depart, struck by the arrow of a hunter in the forest. With his passing, the age of gods walking among men draws to a close. In Hastinapura, years pass. The Pandavas rule with justice, restoring prosperity to the land. Yet time does not heal all wounds. Each brother bears scars, memories of brothers, sons, teachers, and friends lost in war. Bhima remembers Duryodhana's fall, and though he fulfilled his oath, the dishonor of striking below the waist lingers in his mind. Arjuna lives with the grief of Abhimanyu's brutal death, and though he slew Karna, he carries the knowledge that his opponent was in truth his elder brother. Nakula and Sahadeva, though loyal and dutiful, often feel their lives eclipsed by the greater figures around them, their own sons lost in the slaughter. Yudhishthira, burdened most of all, bears the weight of every life lost in the name of his kingship. One of the most poignant moments comes when Yudhishthira encounters Dhritarashtra, the blind king who lost all his sons in the war. Though Yudhishthira kneels to him in respect, Dhritarashtra's grief boils over. In his sorrow and rage, he embraces Bhima with the intent to crush him, for Bhima slew all his sons. Yet Krishna intervenes with subtle trickery, and the blind king instead embraces an iron statue, shattering it in grief. Dhritarashtra weeps, his vengeance incomplete, his sorrow unending. Gandhari too curses Krishna, blaming him for allowing the war to happen. Her curse will eventually bring ruin to his clan, showing once again that no victory escapes the shadow of loss. The years of rule are stable, but marked by resignation. The Pandavas govern well, bringing peace to their subjects, but their hearts are never free. Dharma has been upheld, yet the price of dharma has been so steep that it feels like punishment. The Mahabharata reminds you again and again, life is not a simple balance of good and evil, but a web of duties, choices, and consequences. In the quiet of the palace halls, you sense the approaching end. The heroes who once shook the earth are aging, their destinies nearly fulfilled. The throne they fought for no longer holds the meaning it once did. In their minds, a new journey is taking shape, one that will not be about kingdoms or crowns, but about renunciation and the final pursuit of liberation. This is the turning point. The story that began with ambition, rivalry, and the hunger for power is drawing toward the question of what lies beyond power. Having endured exile, humiliation, war, and victory, the Pandavas must now face the last and greatest challenge, the letting go of all they once clung to. The years of rule pass, and the kingdom prospers under the steady hand of Yudhishthira. Justice prevails, the land flourishes, and the people sing of peace at last. Yet for the Pandavas, peace remains elusive. Their hearts are weary, haunted by shadows of Kurukshetra, the faces of kin slain, and the heavy burden of kingship that was never sought but thrust upon them. Time spares no one. The heroes who once blazed across the battlefield grow older, their strength dimming, though their names remain immortal. Yudhishthira feels the futility of crowns. Arjuna, once invincible, senses his bow lose its vigor. Bhima, whose arms shattered mountains, feels his might ebb. Even Nakula and Sahadeva, guardians of beauty and wisdom, begin to fade. Draupadi, too, scarred by loss, grows quiet, her once fiery spirit tempered by sorrow. The throne of Hastinapura no longer gleams with triumph. It is a reminder of all that was sacrificed to seat them there. One day, a strange stillness falls upon them. The message of Krishna's death reaches Hastinapura, a moment that shakes the very core of existence. The divine presence that had guided them, protected them, and stood as their anchor in chaos is gone. Krishna's passing is not just the end of a friend, it is the end of an age. The Dvapara Yuga, the third of the 4 cosmic ages, has closed. With his death, Kali Yuga, the age of decline, begins. The Pandavas know that their own time too is nearly spent. Yudhishthira gathers his brothers and Draupadi, speaking the truth that has long lain in their hearts. It is time to renounce the world. The kingdom must be left behind, for crowns and thrones are but dust before eternity. Their duty as rulers is fulfilled. Now, a higher duty calls, the pursuit of moksha, liberation from the cycle of birth and death. Parikshit, the grandson of Arjuna, is crowned as heir, to rule the land with guidance from sages. The Pandavas, unburdened, turn their faces to the north. They leave the palace not as kings, but as pilgrims. Clad in simple robes, barefoot, staff in hand, they begin the Mahaprasthana, the great journey. Their path leads them beyond the familiar, toward the Himalayas, toward heaven itself. As they walk, they are joined by a dog, humble and loyal, who follows them faithfully. Step by step, the earth falls away, and the peaks of snow rise like gateways to the divine. Yet this final journey is not without trial. One by one, the Pandavas fall. Draupadi stumbles first, her spirit departing on the mountain slopes. Sahadeva collapses, then Nakula, then Bhima, then Arjuna, all succumbing, not to battle but to the weight of mortality. Yudhishthira alone continues, steadfast, the loyal dog still at his side. At the gates of heaven, Yudhishthira is tested once more. Indra invites him to ascend, but refuses the dog entry. Yudhishthira, bound by compassion, refuses to abandon his companion. He declares that he cannot enter heaven if it means betraying the one who has shown him loyalty. In that moment, the dog reveals its true form. Dharma, the god of righteousness, Yudhishthira's divine father, who had come to test his final resolve. By refusing to abandon even the lowliest creature, Yudhishthira proves his unwavering dharma. Yet heaven is not as he expects. When he enters, he finds not his brothers or Draupadi, but Duryodhana resting in splendor. Confused, angered, Yudhishthira questions the justice of the gods. Then he is led downward, to the realms of suffering, where he hears the cries of his brothers, his wife, and all those who stood by him. The stench of death surrounds him, the fires of torment blaze. He is told this is their fate, punishment for their sins in life. Yudhishthira, refusing to abandon them, declares that he will remain there with them, even if heaven is denied to him. In that moment, the illusion breaks. The gods reveal the truth. This was the final test. The visions of hell were a trial of compassion, of loyalty beyond reward. The Pandavas and Draupadi, purified by their sufferings, ascend to their rightful place in heaven. There they are reunited, their struggles dissolved in the eternal light. The Mahabharata ends not in simple victory or defeat, but in transcendence. The story began with ambition, rivalry, and the hunger for power, yet it closes with renunciation, humility, and the eternal quest for dharma. In the end, the lesson is not that power endures, it does not, but that the choices you make, the compassion you show, and the truth you uphold form the path to liberation. And so you are left with this, the tale of brothers and cousins, gods and men, war and wisdom, sin and salvation. The Mahabharata is not merely a story of the past. It is a mirror of the human condition, where dharma is never easy, where every choice is shadowed by consequence, and where the true victory lies not in kingdoms, but in the liberation of the soul. You have journeyed through the vastness of the Mahabharata, through halls of dice and forests of exile, through the roaring plains of Kurukshetra and the silent peaks of the Himalayas. What began as a quarrel between cousins grew into a saga that spans the heavens and the earth, weaving together war, philosophy, duty, and destiny. It is no ordinary epic. It is the longest poem ever composed, and within its verses lies the heartbeat of a civilization, a reflection of the eternal struggles of humanity. Think of the figures who walked this path. Yudhishthira torn between justice and despair, Bhima bound by rage and loyalty, Arjuna wavering before battle, yet guided by divine counsel. Draupadi, whose honor became the spark of war, and Krishna, the charioteer, the god, the teacher, who revealed the timeless wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita. Each of them embodies more than a role in a story. They embody the questions that echo within every life. What is duty? What is justice? How do we act when every choice carries sin? The Mahabharata teaches not with simple answers, but with the weight of its complexity. It tells you that dharma is not a path of certainty, but of struggle. It reminds you that even the greatest heroes stumble, that even victory brings grief, and that the search for truth is endless. As you let this story settle, you can almost hear the echo of conch shells fading in the distance, the murmur of sages under the trees, the whisper of the Himalayas where the Pandavas took their final steps. The Mahabharata is not finished. It lives on, wherever questions of duty and desire arise, and in hearing it, you too become part of its endless retelling.